I took the job as a personal assistant purely to make ends meet. I never expected the ice queen of campus to actually fall for me. Then she saw me walking with my sister, holding her hand. She slammed me against a wall. Explain. Who is that girl? The entire campus was betting I wouldn't survive the week. Instead, they saw her drag me into an empty locker room, her eyes red. You have 10 minutes. To make me feel better, I stared at the $500 notification from Venmo on my phone and let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Rent was covered for the week. I could finally relax. Are you just going to stand there? A cool voice snapped me back to reality. I quickly shoved my phone in my pocket and hurried to catch up. Isabel Sterling was wearing a simple black dress today that made her skin look like porcelain. The sharp click-clack of her heels echoed on the pavement as she walked. I kept a precise 2-step distance behind her and to the right. It was a rule I'd learned over 3 months of being her glorified gopher. Any closer and I'd get a sharp, "It's hot, give me some space." Any farther, and she'd glare back. "Are you trying to starve me?" "One iced Americano. No sugar." She stopped abruptly in front of a trendy coffee shop, her gaze fixed straight ahead, not even glancing at me. Resigned, I pulled out my phone to use Apple Pay. "We have a buy one get one half off deal today," the barista said with a cheerful smile. I hesitated for a second. "Just one." Isabel's voice drifted over, cold as ice. I quickly paid the full price. She was clearly in a bad mood today, radiating a low-pressure system ever since I picked her up this morning. "Here's your Americano." I jogged over and handed it to her. She took a single sip, and her brow immediately furrowed in disgust. "It's too sweet." "But it's an iced Americano with no sugar," I said instinctively. She shoved the cup back into my hands. "You drink it." Then she turned and walked away. I stared down at the nearly full coffee. It cost $8. A total waste. I ended up drinking it myself, the bitterness making my tongue go numb. Rich people really did have different taste buds. I followed Isabel into the mall, where she browsed without any real purpose. I was already carrying 3 shopping bags, all filled with her things. "Tired?" she asked, suddenly turning to look at me. "Not at all," I said, immediately straightening my posture. "Are you kidding me? The person signing my checks is never tiring." The corner of her mouth seemed to twitch into a tiny smile before she suppressed it. "Go rest over there," she said, pointing to a bench outside a cafe. It was like a pardon from the governor, but I didn't dare look too relieved. She organized the bags to one side and sat down first, then patted the empty space next to her. I sat down, feeling a strange mix of honor and surprise. She usually made me stand. What was with her today? Was the world ending? "The spring gala is next month," she said out of nowhere. "You're co-hosting with me." I nearly slid off the bench. "Me? Hosting with you?" Isabel was the president of the student events committee. The gala host was always her gig, a solo performance. Why would she ever pick a nobody like me? "You don't want to?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "No, it's just I'm surprised," I stammered, scratching my head. "Why me?" She turned her face away, but I thought I saw the tips of her ears turn pink. "Because you're cheap." "Oh, of course. I should have known." $500 for the night, she added. "I'll do it." I accepted immediately. $500. That was a whole week's worth of groceries. I think she might have smiled, but it was gone before I could be sure. "Rehearsal is tomorrow after class," she said, standing up. "Now, come with me to the bookstore." I grabbed the bags and followed, my mind already calculating how to budget the extra $500. I was so distracted that I didn't notice she had stopped walking. I walked right in her back. I said, jumping back, but she didn't snap at me like she usually would. Her gaze was fixed on something, and her expression had turned ugly. I followed her line of sight, and my heart stopped. Chloe was standing at the entrance of the bookstore, smiling and waving at me. I was so dead. "Leo," she chirped, running over and linking her arm through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. "What are you doing here?" I quickly pulled my arm away as a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. "I'm shopping with a classmate." I snuck a glance at Isabel. Her face was cold enough to cause frostbite. "And who is this?" Chloe asked, looking at Isabel with curiosity. "This is my classmate, Isabel Sterling." I then turned to Isabel. "This is my sister. The kind you're not actually related to, I take it." Isabel cut me off, her voice dangerously low. "Well, yes, but..." I tried to explain, but her glare froze the words in my throat. She looked at me, then at Chloe, who still had a friendly hand on my arm. A smile spread across Isabel's face, a terrifying, cold smile. "How nice for you," she said, then turned on her heel and walked away. "Isabel." I instinctively moved to follow her, but Chloe held me back. "Leo, who was that?" "She's gorgeous." Panic was making my head spin. "She's my boss, and I think I just lost my job." Chloe stuck out her tongue. "Oops, sorry. I didn't know you were working." I sighed. "It's not your fault. Look, just head home. I have to go apologize." I shoved the shopping bags into Chloe's arms and sprinted after Isabel, but she was already gone. I tried calling her. The first call went straight to voicemail. The second time, her phone was off. I stood at the entrance of the mall, a cold dread washing over me. This job was toast. Not just toast. I was going to be crucified. Everyone at Blackwood University knew about Isabel Sterling's temper. No one who crossed her ever came out unscathed. I went home dejected and barely slept a wink. The next morning, I got to campus half an hour early to wait for her at the main gate. It was our routine. She always arrived at 7:40 a.m. sharp. But today, 7:50 came and went with no sign of her. Finally, her familiar black sedan pulled up. I straightened my shirt and walked over. The door opened and Isabel got out. She walked right past me without a single glance. "Isabel," I called out, chasing after her. She didn't slow down. "That girl yesterday, she's my sister." I started to explain. "Not my problem," she said coolly. "We're just neighbors. Her parents asked me to look after her. You don't need to report your personal life to me." She finally stopped and gave me an icy stare. "You're fired." My stomach dropped. "Just because of my sister. I don't need an unprofessional assistant," she interrupted. "You abandoned your duties in the middle of a job yesterday. I was running after you." "Are you talking back to me?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I immediately shut my mouth. "Don't wait for me after class today," she said and walked off. I just stood there, stunned. It was over. All of it. I hadn't just lost my job. I had made an enemy of the most powerful person on campus. The entire day was a blur of anxiety. I tried to find her at the student events office during a break, but her vice president stopped me at the door. "Isabel said she doesn't want to see you," he said, his face a blank mask. I trudged back to my classroom and found an envelope on my desk. Inside was $500 in cash and a note. "Final week's pay. We're even." Even the period at the end felt cold. I clutched the cash, a sour feeling in my gut. After my last class, I walked to the school gate out of habit, only to remember I'd been fired. As I was about to leave, I saw Isabel walking out, but she wasn't alone. Another guy was with her, the student body president, Cameron Ashford. They were walking side by side, laughing and talking. I ducked behind a tree, a strange, acidic feeling rising in my chest. Cam and Isabel looked good together, both from wealthy families, both popular and attractive. A campus power couple. Unlike me, just some poor kid worrying about his next meal. I turned to leave when someone called out to me. "Hey, you, wait a second." It was Cameron's voice. I froze, then slowly turned around. Isabel's eyes met mine, and her expression instantly hardened. "What is it?" Cameron walked over with a friendly smile. "You're Izzy's assistant, right?" "Izzy." He called her Izzy. I nodded, then shook my head. I was. Perfect timing. "Could you do me a favor?" Cameron handed me a bag. "These are some books Izzy left at my place. Could you take them to her classroom for her?" I looked at Isabel. She didn't object, just stood there with a stony face. I took the bag. "Thanks, man," Cameron said with a smile, then casually put a hand on Isabel's shoulder. "I'll see you tomorrow." Isabel nodded, watching him go before her gaze fell on me. "Give them to me." I handed her the bag. As she took it, her fingers brushed against mine, and she recoiled as if she'd been burned. A sharp sting went through my chest. "About yesterday." I tried again. "It doesn't matter," she cut in. "We have nothing to do with each other anymore." She turned to go. "Are you and Cameron?" I blurted out. She stopped and looked back. "What? Are you dating?" I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. It was none of my business. But she smiled. "What if we are?" My heart sank. "Oh, that's great. Still not as great as you and your sister," she shot back, then walked away. I stood there for a long time, rooted to the spot. For the next few days, I went back to being a normal student. No more early mornings waiting by the gate. No more being on call 24/7. No more schlepping bags around the mall. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I'd see Isabel on campus sometimes, always surrounded by people. Cameron was a frequent presence by her side. The rumor mill was buzzing that they were officially dating. The golden couple. A match made in heaven. I just buried my head in my textbooks and pretended not to hear. On Friday, my professor asked me to help move some equipment after class. By the time I was done, it was already dark. As I passed the student events office, I saw the lights were still on. On a strange impulse, I walked over. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Isabel was sitting alone, staring blankly at her computer screen. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. I hesitated, wondering if I should go in, but then she looked up and saw me. Her expression immediately hardened. "What do you want?" "I was just passing by. Saw the lights were on." I pointed down the hallway. "The building is closing soon." She started packing her things, clearly wanting me to leave. I turned to go, but then I heard a sharp intake of breath. I looked back and saw her clutching her finger. Blood was seeping out. A paper cut. Without thinking, I rushed in and grabbed her hand. "Are you okay?" She froze for a second, then violently snatched her hand back. "Don't touch me. You're bleeding. It's none of your business." She grabbed a tissue and pressed it against the cut, continuing to pack. I stood there, feeling useless. "So, the spring gala," I said, trying to fill the silence. "The hosting. Someone else is doing it," she said flatly. "Oh, of course. Cameron Ashford?" I asked, then immediately wanted to kick myself. Her movements paused for a fraction of a second. "Yes." She shut down her laptop, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the door. I followed her quietly. "You don't have to walk me out," she said without looking back. "It's late, it's not safe. I have a driver." She held up her phone. Sure enough, the black sedan was already waiting at the gate. She got in and drove off without a backward glance. I stood at the empty school gate, my heart feeling just as hollow. That weekend, my part-time job at the convenience store had an unexpected visitor. Chloe showed up with a few of her friends. "Leo," she said, leaning cheerfully over the counter. "I didn't know you worked here." "Gotta pay the bills," I said, scanning her items. "So what about that gorgeous classmate of yours? Is she not your boss anymore?" she asked, poking at the exact spot that was still sore. "Nope," I said, not bothering to elaborate. "That's too bad. I totally think she has a crush on you." My hand slipped, and the scanner nearly fell to the floor. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm serious." The way she looked at me that day. Total jealousy. Chloe insisted. Her friends chimed in. "Yeah, Chloe said that girl was a total 10. Way to go, Leo, pulling the campus queen." Their chatter was giving me a headache. "She's a trust fund kid, and I'm just a bro college student. How is that even possible? Love knows no class," Chloe declared, pumping her fist. I pushed her bag of snacks towards her. "Just go, and maybe read a few more books and a few less comics." She stuck her tongue out and left with her friends. But her words echoed in my head. Isabel Sterling. Likes me? No way. She just saw me as cheap labor. A toy to mess with. On Monday, a huge piece of gossip swept through the entire campus. Isabel and Cameron had a massive fight. A public screaming match in the student government office. Cameron had stormed out, and Isabel had emerged with red-rimmed eyes. Apparently, it was about the event schedule for the spring gala. I couldn't help but wander over to the events office, supposedly to ask a question. I saw Isabel tearing into her committee members. Several of the vice presidents were standing with their heads bowed as she berated them. "How can you mess up something so simple?" She slammed a folder onto the table. "Do it again, and no one leaves until it's perfect." She looked up, and her eyes landed on me. Her expression soured even more. "What are you looking at?" I made a hasty retreat. It started raining after my last class. I didn't have an umbrella, so I was stuck waiting under the awning of the main academic building. Then I saw Isabel walk out. She didn't have an umbrella either and was standing at the edge of the overhang, watching the rain. Cameron came up behind her and offered her his umbrella. "Let's go together." Isabel didn't take it. "No, thank you." Still mad, Cameron asked with a soft smile. "I'm sorry, okay? It was business." "There's nothing to be mad about," Isabel said, her tone clinical. "What about non-business?" Cameron moved a step closer. "Let me buy you dinner to make up for it." "I'm busse." Isabel shifted away from him, moving closer to my side of the entryway. I instinctively stepped back and bumped into the wall, making a noise. They both turned to look. Cameron frowned. What are you doing here? Waiting for the rain to stop? I answered honestly. Isabel glanced at me, and then a strange smile appeared on her face. She turned back to Cameron. Did you say you wanted to buy me dinner? Let's go. Cameron's face lit up. Really? Yes. Isabel nodded. Then she looked directly at me. You're coming too. I was stunned. Me? Is there an echo? She retorted, one eyebrow raised. But why would I? To pay, she said, and walked out into the rain. Cameron quickly opened the umbrella and followed her. I hesitated for a moment before running out into the downpour after them. The restaurant was the fanciest one near campus, the kind I normally wouldn't even dare to look inside. Isabel ordered with an air of casual familiarity while Cameron made pleasant conversation with her. I sat across from them, feeling like a third wheel. Want a drink? Cameron asked. Whatever, Isabel said. Then she looked at me. You're drinking. I could only nod. When the drinks arrived, Isabel started downing them one after another. Hey, slow down, Cameron cautioned. She ignored him, her eyes fixed on me. Why aren't you drinking? I had no choice but to keep up. Halfway through the meal, Cameron's phone rang, and he stepped away to take the call. It was just me and Isabel left at the table. She was already drunk, her head resting on the table as she stared at me. You're such an idiot, she slurred. I blinked. Are you talking to me? Who else? She muttered, flirting with other girls. And then you just let me fire you. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You were the one who fired me. So, if I fire you, you just leave? You're that obedient? She glared at me, her eyes watery. What else was I supposed to do? You could have apologized, you could have begged me. Her voice cracked. Even Cameron knows how to make me feel better. But you do nothing. My heart skipped a beat. You wanted me to make you feel better. She seemed to snap back to her senses for a moment, sitting up straight. In your dreams. Then she went back to drinking. By the time Cameron returned, she was completely wasted. I'll take her home, Cameron said, trying to help her up. But she pushed him away and pointed a wavering finger at me. You take me. Both Cameron and I were shocked. Izzy, stop fooling around, Cameron said with a frown. I want him to take me, she said stubbornly, her eyes locked on mine. I had no choice but to stand up. I'll take her. Cameron's face darkened, but he didn't argue further. Outside, the rain had stopped. Isabel leaned heavily against me, barely able to walk. Address? I asked, wondering where she lived. She mumbled the name of a luxury condo building. I hailed a cab and helped her in. She fell asleep against my shoulder, her warm breath tickling my neck. My heart was doing a weird fluttery thing. The security guard at her building recognized her and let us in without question. I managed to get her to her apartment door. Keys? I asked. She fumbled through her pockets and came up empty. Maybe I lost them. She mumbled. I felt a headache coming on. Wait, passcode. She leaned against the wall, thinking hard. Then she recited a string of numbers. I typed them in, and the door clicked open. I helped her inside. The moment I turned on the lights, I was stunned. It was a massive, beautifully furnished penthouse, but it was an absolute disaster zone. Clothes and bags were strewn everywhere. Takeout containers were piled on the coffee table. It was a complete contradiction to the cool, put-together goddess everyone saw on campus. You live like this? I couldn't help but ask. She collapsed onto the sofa. The cleaning service comes tomorrow. I sighed and started picking things up. She watched me, a slow smile spreading across her face. This is kind of like we're married, she said dreamily. My hand slipped, and I almost dropped a glass. You're drunk. No, I'm not. She stood up and staggered towards me. I like you. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs like a drum. I really like you. She wrapped her arms around my waist and buried her face in my chest. Don't like anyone else. Okay. I was completely at a loss for what to do. Isabel, you're drunk. Call me Izzy, she mumbled, looking up at me, her eyes wet and shimmering. Cameron calls me that. That's different. How is it different? She leaned in closer, her breath smelling of wine and something faintly sweet. I tried to back away, but hit the arm of the sofa and tumbled into it. She followed, landing softly on top of me. Found you, she giggled, poking the tip of my nose like a child. Then she lowered her head and kissed me. My brain shut down. The feeling was soft, sweet, and tasted of wine. A few seconds later, she slumped against me, fast asleep in my arms. I just sat there, holding her, completely rigid, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window. I was on the sofa, covered with a soft blanket. I could hear sounds coming from the kitchen. While I walked in, I saw Isabel making breakfast. She was in sweats and a t-shirt, her hair tied up in a messy bun, with no makeup on. Seeing me, her face instantly flushed. "You're awake?" "Yeah," I said, scratching my head, the awkwardness thick in the air. "Last night." "I drank too much," she cut in sharply, sliding a fried egg onto a plate. "I don't remember a thing." She wouldn't look at me, her ears glowing red as she arranged the plates. "Oh," I said, a little disappointed, but also relieved. "Eat," she commanded, handing me a fork. Our fingers brushed, and she pulled her hand back like it was on fire. The silence was deafening. I ate quietly. "You're back on the payroll, starting today," she said suddenly. I stared at her. "What?" "Double the pay," she said, taking a sip of orange juice. "And you're not allowed to refuse." A slow smile spread across my face. "Okay," she smiled back, then quickly schooled her features into a frown. "Finish up. You're driving me to school." "Yes, ma'am." At school, everything was the same but different. She would sometimes flash a small smile in my direction, though she'd quickly hide it. It was softer than before. When Cameron came to talk to her, she would glance at me before turning down his invitations. The campus rumor mill started churning again. Isabel Sterling had dumped Cameron Ashford for her broke personal assistant. I felt a secret thrill whenever I heard it, but I never let it show. That Friday, I went with her to the events committee rehearsal. Cameron was there. The moment he saw me, his expression soured. "Unauthorized personnel aren't allowed in the rehearsal hall," he said, looking pointedly at me. Isabel grabbed my arm. "He's my assistant." "That's not an official position in the committee," Cameron said coldly. "I'm creating one right now." Isabel shot back, refusing to yield. "Izzy, don't be difficult." Cameron's tone softened. "The gala is important." "Which is exactly why I need an assistant." She pulled me into the room with her. Cameron shot me a death glare. I ignored him. Halfway through the rehearsal, Isabel needed a drink. I quickly handed her my water bottle. She took a sip straight from it without a second thought, her lips touching the spot mine had just been, then went back to directing the rehearsal. The other students were staring. Cameron's face was turning a shade of purple. During a break, Isabel went to the restroom. Cameron immediately cornered me. "Stay away from her." I played dumb. "Who?" "You know who," he hissed. "You're not good enough for her." I laughed. "Whether I am or not isn't for you to decide." His eyes went cold. "Don't push your luck." "Look, Cameron," I said, meeting his gaze. "We're not in some movie. You can't just threaten people." He was about to say something else when Isabel returned. "What are you two talking about?" she asked, positioning herself next to me and looking at Cameron. "Nothing." Cameron's demeanor changed in a heartbeat, his smile returning. "Just getting to know my fellow student." Isabel ignored him and turned to me. "Let's go. I'm hungry." She casually took my wrist and started pulling me out of the room. I glanced back at Cameron. His expression was dangerously dark. The second we were out the door, Isabel dropped my hand, her ears turning red again. "What do you want to eat?" she asked, trying to sound nonchalant. "Anything's fine." I couldn't stop the grin from spreading across my face. She glared at me. "What are you smiling about?" "I'm happy," I said honestly. She snorted, but the corner of her mouth curved up. "Whatever." After dinner, she wanted to go to the bookstore. Naturally, I followed. And of course, we ran into Chloe again. This time, I knew better. I immediately put some distance between us. "Leo," Chloe yelled, running over. She saw Isabel, and her eyes twinkled. "Hey, sis-in-law." I nearly choked. Isabel froze. Then her entire face turned crimson. "Don't call me that," she whispered, but there was no real anger in her voice. Chloe just giggled and leaned in conspiratorially. "Take good care of my brother for me, okay?" And with that, she scampered off, leaving me and Isabel standing in awkward silence. "Your sister is something else," Isabel said, pretending to be absorbed in a book cover, her ears still bright red. "Yeah," I said, scratching my head. Things went smoothly after that, until the day before the spring gala. At the final dress rehearsal, Isabel and Cameron got into another argument over the script. Cameron wanted to change the order of events, and Isabel refused. "I've already made my decision," Isabel said coldly. "I'm a student body president. I have the final say," Cameron retorted, his tone just as hard. "Then you can host it by yourself." Isabel turned to storm off, but I grabbed her arm. "Don't," I whispered. She looked at me and took a deep breath. "We're sticking to the original plan. If you don't like it, we can find a new co-host." Cameron stared at me, then a strange, unsettling smile crossed his face. "Fine, we'll stick to the plan." He agreed way too easily. Something felt very wrong. On the day of the gala, I was backstage helping out. Isabel was in the makeup chair. I brought her a bottle of water. She grabbed my wrist, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Are you nervous?" she whispered. "A little," I admitted. "Me too," she said, biting her lip. "It's my first time co-hosting with you." My heart hammered in my chest. "There'll be more." She smiled. "Yeah." Just then, Cameron appeared. "It's time," he said to Isabel, his smile never quite reaching his cold eyes. I watched them walk onto the stage. In the spotlight, they looked like the perfect couple. My stomach twisted. The first half went off without a hitch. But during the mid-show interactive segment, everything went sideways. The giant screen that was supposed to play a highlight reel flickered, and then displayed a series of iMessage screenshots. My text with Isabel. "Izzy, so tired. I need bubble tea. Leo, on my way. Izzy, extra sweet. Leo, you're not worried about calories. Izzy, you'll still have to deal with me if I get fat." And then more recent, more intimate ones. "Leo, you up?" "Izzy, yeah." "Leo, thinking about you." "Izzy, just say what you mean." "Leo, I'm thinking about you." The entire auditorium erupted in gasps and whispers. Isabel's face went completely pale. Cameron stood there, microphone in hand, a look of faux surprise on his face. Well, looks like our hosts have a little something going on," he said with a chuckle, though his eyes were like chips of ice. The crowd started hooting and catcalling. Isabel was frozen, a deer in the headlights. I ran onto the stage, took off my jacket, and wrapped it around her shaking shoulders. I started pulling her towards the backstage exit. "Let go of me," she struggled. "We have to get out of here," I said, holding her tighter. Backstage was chaos. Cameron followed us, his face a mask of fake concern. "Izzy, I had no idea this would happen." Isabel wrenched away from me and slapped him hard across the face. "You're disgusting," she said, her voice trembling. Cameron clutched his cheek, still playing the victim. "I just thought it would be a funny joke." "Get out," Isabel screamed, pointing towards the door. Cameron's face contorted with rage for a second before he stormed out. The rest of the stagehands quickly made themselves scarce. It was just the two of us. She slid to the floor, wrapping her arms around herself. I knelt in front of her. "It's okay." She looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. "Everyone saw." "So what if they saw?" I said, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. "They didn't do anything wrong." "They're laughing at me," she choked out. "They think I'm chasing after you." "Who said that?" I frowned. "Everyone," she whispered, looking down. "They say I have bad taste, that you're not good enough." My heart ached. "And what do you think?" She looked up, surprised, and shook her head. "I don't care," she said in a small voice. "I really, really like you." I looked at her, then pulled her to her feet. "What are you doing?" she asked, startled. I dragged her back out onto the stage. The spotlights were still on. The audience hadn't left. They were all still there, waiting for the next scene in the drama. I picked up the microphone from the floor. "Hey, everyone." My voice boomed through the auditorium, instantly silencing the crowd. Isabel tugged on my sleeve. "Leo, are you insane?" I squeezed her hand. "About those text messages you all just saw," I said, taking a deep breath. "They're real." Another wave of murmurs swept through the audience. "I'm pursuing Isabel Sterling," I said, my voice clear and steady. "And I haven't succeeded yet. So she's not the one chasing anyone. I'm the one who's hopelessly trying to get her attention." Isabel was staring at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You?" I pressed on. "And as for whether or not I'm good enough for her," I smiled. "I'm in love with her, and she's willing to give me a chance. That's all that matters." I dropped the mic and pulled her off the stage, leaving behind a stunned silence that slowly erupted into a wave of applause and cheers. Backstage, Isabel was still in shock. What you just said? It was from the heart, I said, looking her straight in the eye. So, can I have an answer now? Her face slowly turned a deep shade of pink. An answer to what? Can I pursue you? I asked seriously. She looked down at her feet. After a long moment, she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Yeah. I felt a surge of pure joy and had to resist the urge to pick her up and spin her around. So, I should probably get back to work. She laughed, a real, beautiful laugh. Okay. A new hosting pair finished the gala. We hid backstage, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. Cameron was the one who leaked the texts, wasn't he? Yeah, I nodded. He came to me last night, said he wanted to collaborate. I scoffed. He wanted me to leak our relationship to create buzz for the event. I told him to get lost. She squeezed my hand. So he decided to force the issue. I'm sorry, she whispered. This is all my fault. I should be the one apologizing, I said, pulling her closer. I'm sorry they made fun of you. She shook her head. Actually, I was kind of happy. She looked up at me. You were really hot up there. I grinned. Only just now. She snorted. Most of the time, you're an idiot. But her eyes were shining. After the gala, Cameron was removed from his position as student body president. Isabel took over, and I was officially promoted to boyfriend and assistant. She was still bossy and proud, but in a much softer way. At least now, she let me sit with her when she ate. On Friday, she announced that she wanted to see my apartment. I froze. It's really not great. So I can't see it? She challenged, raising an eyebrow. No, you can't. So I took her home. The building was old, the stairwell narrow. But she didn't seem to mind at all, looking around with genuine curiosity. Which one is your room? I pointed, and she walked right in and sat on my bed. It's cleaner than I expected, she commented. I scratched my head. I tried to keep it tidy. Her eyes landed on a framed photo on my desk, a picture of me and Chloe. Your sister seems very attached to you, she said, a hint of jealousy in her tone. She's just a kid, I explained quickly. I know, she cut in. I would have stopped talking to you a long time ago. She flopped back onto my bed. I'm tired. I'm taking a nap. I stared at her. Here. Is that a problem? She said, her eyes closed. Can I sleep in my boyfriend's bed? My heart started racing. Yeah, you can. She actually fell asleep. I sat on the chair next to the bed and just watched her. Her face was so peaceful, all the icy walls gone. I couldn't resist leaning down and kissing her on the forehead. Her eyes snapped open. Were you just kissing me? I jumped back. No. Liar, she said, grabbing the front of my shirt. You have the guts to do it, but not to admit it. I looked at her face, so close to mine. Okay, fine. I did it, and I leaned in and kissed her again, this time on the lips. Her ears turned bright red, but she didn't pull away. Getting bold. I learned from the best. I grinned. She snorted, but wrapped her arms around my neck. Continue. And we kissed, a real kiss, not a drunken accident. Her response was inexperienced, but eager. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. She turned bright red and buried her face in my chest. You're not allowed to tell anyone. Tell them what? I feigned ignorance. That the great Isabel Sterling can get shy. She pinched my side. You want to die? I laughed and surrendered, holding her tight. I won't tell. This is all for me. She looked up and glared, but there was a smile in her eyes. Greedy. Learn that from you, too. I kissed her again. She didn't fight it. Later that evening, Chloe came home and saw Isabel. She squealed with delight and launched herself into the room. Sis-in-law. This time, Isabel didn't correct her. She just smiled. Hi. That only made Chloe happier. She sat down and started chattering away. I went to the kitchen to make dinner, some simple pasta, and I could hear them talking. Is my brother a total dork? Yes, a huge one. But he's crazy about you. He talks about you all the time. Really? Totally. He even says your name in his sleep. I burst out of the kitchen. Chloe. She giggled and hid behind Isabel. Sis-in-law, protect me. Isabel laughed and shielded her. Hey, don't you bully my little sister-in-law. I stopped. Sister-in-law. Her face flushed. Slip of the tongue. But she didn't take it back. At dinner, Isabel naturally put some pasta on my plate. Eat more. You're too skinny. I was floored. Chloe Wolf whistled. Wow, you guys are so cute, it's disgusting. Isabel shot her a glare. Don't talk with your mouth full. But then she added more sauce to my plate. I walked her home later that night. We got to her building, but she wouldn't get out of the car. I'll pick you up tomorrow, I said. Okay, she nodded but still held my hand. Don't want me to go? I teased. Of course not, she said, but she made no move to leave. All right, we can sit for a bit longer, I said, squeezing her hand. We sat in silence for a moment. The flowers on campus are really pretty right now, she said suddenly. Yeah, we should go see them next time. Okay. She turned to face me. Kiss me. I blinked, then smiled and leaned in, giving her a soft, gentle kiss. She responded eagerly, her fingers clutching my shirt. When we pulled away, both our faces were flushed. I'm going, she said, and quickly got out of the car. She ran toward the entrance, then suddenly turned back. Hey, yeah. I love you, she shouted, and then disappeared inside before I could even process it. I sat there, stunned, my heart about to explode. It was the first time she'd said it, even from a distance, and shouted as she was running away. It was more than enough. I drove home with a goofy grin on my face and didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I was waiting for her right on time. She came down wearing her usual immaculate clothes, but she had a small, flower-shaped clip in her hair. Do you like it? She asked, pretending to be casual. I love it, I smiled. You look beautiful. She snorted, but the corners of her mouth lifted. We walked to campus together. At the gate, some classmates saw us. Morning, Izzy. Morning, Leo. Isabel's face hardened. Who gave you permission to be so familiar? But her ears were red. I just smiled and waved back. Morning. She pinched my arm. Don't encourage them. But she squeezed my hand tighter. After class, we went to the library. She was studying for midterms, and I was helping her organize her notes. You got this one wrong. I pointed to a problem. No, I didn't, she insisted. Yes, you did. I chuckled. Want to bet? She glared at me, then erased her answer and scribbled down the new one. It's barely correct. Yes, of course. The great Isabel is always right. I kissed the top of her head. She nudged me away. No PDA in the library, she whispered fiercely. A few students nearby chuckled. She shot them a death glare, and they immediately buried their heads in their books. She secretly pinched my leg under the table. This is all your fault. I smiled and took the blame. My fault, she huffed, then leaned her head against my shoulder. I am tired. Going to sleep for a bit. Okay. I shifted to make her more comfortable. She fell asleep quickly, her gentle breaths on my neck. I didn't dare move until she woke up. What time is it? She mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Almost closing time. I stretched my shoulder. She saw and immediately started rubbing it for me. You idiot. Why didn't you wake me up? You look so peaceful. I smiled. Her expression softened. Let's go home. Yeah. We packed up and left. The moonlight was bright, and she held my hand as we walked slowly. My birthday is next month, she said suddenly. I know. Did you give me a present? She asked, glancing at me. It's a secret, I grinned. She pinched me. If you don't tell me, I'm deducting points. How many points do I have? 100. And what's my current score? 59. That's a failing grade. I pretended to cry. I'll have to work really hard to pass. She stood on her toes and kissed me. Plus 1 point. Only one. I protested. You think that's not enough? She threatened. No, it's plenty. I said quickly. She laughed. Good. At her building, she lingered again. 5 more minutes, she said, looking at her watch. Okay. We sat on a bench, and she leaned against me, pointing out the stars. That one's the brightest. Like your eyes, I said. She snorted. So cheesy, but she was pleased. When 5 minutes were up, she stood. Okay, I'm going. All right, I nodded. She walked a few steps, then ran back and threw her arms around me in a tight hug. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, I said, hugging her back. She pulled away, her eyes shining. Say it again. Say what? What you said last night. I smiled. I love you. Her face turned red. Okay, she mumbled, then gave me a quick, feather-light kiss. I love you too. And then she was gone. I stood there, my heart so full it felt like it might just float away. The parental meeting was as terrifying as I'd imagined. Her father, A man who looked like he could buy and sell countries before breakfast grilled me about my finances, my family, and my 5-year plan. Her mother was quieter, but watched me with an unnerving intensity. I was sweating through the new shirt Isabel had bought me for the occasion. "He's a good person," Isabel had insisted, holding my hand under the table. "And I love him." Her father had finally sighed, looking less like a titan of industry and more like a tired dad. He offered me an internship at his company. "Start at the bottom," he'd said. "We'll see what you're made of." I worked my ass off. I finished my degree while working 60-hour weeks, fueled by late-night coffee and the care packages Isabel would drop off, always pretending she just had extra. A year after graduation, I proposed under a canopy of spring blossoms on campus, in the exact spot where I'd first told the whole world I was in love with her. The ring wasn't huge, but it was mine, paid for with my first real bonus. She cried. "It's so tacky," she said, but she held out her hand anyway. "Fina, I guess I'll say yes." Our wedding was 3 years ago. Today, she's a powerhouse VP, and I'm a division head at her father's company. Most days, she comes home, kicks off her heels, and collapses onto the sofa. "I'm exhausted," she'll complain. "Some idiot messed up the quarterly projections." I'll massage her shoulders. "Fire him." "Already did," she'll say with a smirk, then turn and wrap her arms around me. "I need a kiss." And I'll kiss her, and it feels just like the first time. "I love you," I'll say. "I love you more," she'll reply. We have a daughter now, a little girl with my eyes and her mother's fiery spirit. We took her to see the blossoms on campus last week. "Daddy, look," she shouted, pointing at the falling petals. Isabel laughed and chased her through the shower of pink and white. I watched them, my 2 girls, and felt a sense of peace so profound it almost hurt. My daughter ran back and tugged on my hand. "The flowers are pretty, Daddy, just like Mommy." Isabel blushed. "She gets that silver tongue from you." I leaned over and kissed my wife. "It's just the truth. We're in public," she hissed, but she was smiling. Our daughter covered her eyes with her tiny hands. "I'm not looking." We all laughed. The petals fell around us, a gentle blessing. Isabel leaned her head on my shoulder. "Next time, we come back alone," she whispered. "Just us." I nodded. "Deal." Later that night, after our daughter was asleep, we sat on our porch swing, looking at the stars. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Completely," I said. "You?" She snorted softly. "I'm moderately content." But she squeezed my hand. "Okay, fine. I'm ridiculously, disgustingly happy." In the moonlight, her smile was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. The Ice Queen had melted a long time ago, and the woman who remained was my entire world.